Atomic Heart. Should you buy it right now, shortlist it, or avoid it completely? Well, today we're going to be speaking about exactly that, telling you what I loved about the game personally, what I didn't like about the game so much, and ultimately, because we're a lore and story channel, is the game's story as good as you'd expect? Do consider leaving a like on today's video, it'd be greatly appreciated. And also, if you're brand new to the channel or a returning viewer, subscribing would be very, very much appreciated. We are a lore and story channel, so if you're into that sort of stuff, you'll really like it here and you'll feel right at home. We have Destiny 2 Lightfall coming out tomorrow. I am extremely excited for it, and there'll be so much content on the channel about Destiny 2, so if you're into that stuff as well, this will be the place for you. But without further ado, let's dive straight in. Before we get into it, check the timestamps in the description down below to skip to whichever parts of the review that you would like to, story being at the end, main gameplay and details being at the start. So let's start with graphics and gameplay. So Atomic Heart is absolutely gorgeous. I don't care what anybody says about this game, it looks absolutely brilliant. I think the graphics are great, and it really shows on that Xbox One X that I was personally playing on, and even those higher end systems that some of you guys might be playing on too. Even down to the detail of some of the animations, for example when collecting the ciphers throughout the game, it's just the finer little details that are really, really cool. The opening of all of the drawers and the cabinets when you go to loot, and all of the things that are coming at you as well, the little tentacles and stuff when you heal yourself. And there's been so much care put into these animations, and they're little tiny details which you really learn to appreciate when playing through the game and finding these other objects and things scattered around the world. So how does the gameplay actually feel? The upgrades, and a big one, the puzzles throughout. Gameplay wise, I thought it was fairly smooth, other than a couple of frame drops here and there. I didn't get the exact FPS counts because I was playing on the Xbox Series X, but I did notice when going in elevators and going in areas where there's a lot of AI, and also areas where not a lot was really happening, which was kind of strange. I would get massive frame drops, feeling like I was going below 30 FPS at times. Gunplay and weapon play, combat in general, it was okay within my playthrough. I typically use the shotgun throughout, and also the melee weapon, which was the axe, the two things you unlock very early on in the game. And to unlock other weapons throughout, you need to find blueprints by searching and essentially traversing through the map and exploring different buildings and areas and doing different things as well. For me personally, I didn't bother with any of that. I just went straight through to the story and carried it on with a shotgun and an axe, and that was enough for me. You unlock a couple of weapons here and there, I think 2 pistols and then an electronic submachine gun or something like that, which isn't great, but you do unlock them along the way. There's plenty of the other weapons within the sandbox that you can optionally find throughout the world, but you don't need to, which is good. And I like the fact that you aren't forced to have to go out and find them in order to progress. It probably would be easier to progress with these weapons, but you don't need to, which is good. However, some of the things that really irritated me during this game was the enemy types. Not the fact that the designs or what they did in general, it was the fact that they're just, some of them are so unbalanced and bullet spongy. Absolutely blew my mind as to why there were so many of these enemies in one area, or why there were a particular enemy that was showing up 3 or 4 times throughout the story that will take you upwards of literally 15 minutes to kill, and this isn't a boss, this is a standard enemy. Just know that if you ever come across this enemy and you play Atomic Heart, you'll be there for at least 10-15 minutes trying to destroy it. It is absolutely ridiculous. Every time I came across one and every time I seen one, it was a facepalm moment of, I'm going to have to spend 10 minutes trying to destroy this enemy when I could be doing other things. And that was the one part that I thought was a bit of a chore throughout the playthrough. Yes, if you use flames, if you use fire, you can kill it quicker, but still, it takes such a long time to kill this enemy. Not to mention as well, the worst part about it isn't just necessarily the bullet sponges, but if you're caught by this enemy, you have to enter some quick time event that you're forced into completing, and it's the same thing every single time. It is mash a button, and then it's press buttons as they come up on the screen. It's so tedious, and it's not just the first time that it's tedious, it's the 4th and the 5th time in the fight that you're pulled in by this thing, and it just got really repetitive really fast. As you're moving through the open world, there are sometimes just an overload of enemies too, which can really screw you over. Each of them attacking you in different ways, different areas, all having different combat types, which is a good thing for variation, but when they're all clusterfucking you at once, it's kind of irritating. Especially on those high difficulties as well, you are forced to use vehicles to traverse through the town, which is fair enough. It's an easy way to get through the town, it's faster, It's fun to drive a car through, to smash these robots. You can't smash the robots because the second that you do smash the robots, the car explodes in literally 2 or 3 hits. You can't win with this game traversing around the map quickly. You are forced to go up the road 10 meters, destroy the robots with a car, get out of the car and find a new car, and rinse and repeat until you get to your next objective. It is literally exactly that. When you come across a load of enemies, like as you can see on the screen right now, this is an area that's quite far into the game. You're on a bridge and you're forced to go directly across it. You can literally skip the entire bridge by going to the right, or you can take your time and take the enemies out on the left. But why would you do that? When they're extremely bullet spongy and the car will blow up in 2 hits. In my opinion, in areas of Atomic Heart, there was a serious bunch of balancing issues, which in terms of combat situations, vehicle health, weapon damage for some enemies too. Look, this is nothing that can't be fixed upon release and upon patches being pushed out. In playtests, this stuff should have been picked up. It's very clear. The boss fights though, were really fun. I think there was about 5 throughout the entirety of the game, and I really enjoyed fighting all of the different types of robots as well. All of them really interesting backstories as well, pertaining to the story and the overall plot, which I really enjoyed. All of them being civilian robots that were fitted with combat systems like rockets, machine guns, railguns, homing missiles, stuff like that. And the question is, you think in the entire way up until the end of the game, why are civilian robots fitted with these machinery, this weaponry, stuff like that? And it really does link in nicely with the story, and I appreciated that as well, with myself being really into the story of the games and stuff like that. I liked that. Movement wise, the character you control has very basic movement mechanics. There's no sprinting in the game, so pacing is slowed right down throughout as well, and you can almost like dash forward when trying to dodge out of the way, or jump onto new obstacles as well when traversing around the map and going through puzzles and things like that. It works quite well. I don't think there was really any need for sprint in this game, and it was quite a throwback really to have a game without sprint. It was like the OG Halo days where you didn't have to sprint around the map. You could just jump onto ledges or do whatever you needed to do in that way. I liked it. It was quite a good throwback, and it just shows that not every new game going forward needs to have sprint or tac sprint or anything like that. And finally, one of the best parts of the game, a really underrated part in fact, that I don't know if this is getting mixed views or opinions, but I personally really liked it, the puzzles. I really love the puzzles in this game. They were so simplistic, but yet they were really fun, and when you do them quite a lot, you master the puzzle, and it's easier over time because you've done it so often that it clicks like that, and you can just do it straight away. And that's how a puzzle should be in games. Yes, it should be a challenge still, but ultimately, a puzzle is you learn it and it becomes automated in your mind, right? And that's exactly what happened here. The first one being where you have to click your finger in game, so press X or A or whatever it is on the controller you're using. Essentially where the green light hits the bulb, then go round, and then when they've all gone in, then the puzzle's completed. It was really good. And it takes a bit of time to master, but when you do, it's really intuitive. And you can even do it with your eyes closed, just by listening to the sound cues as well, which was really cool. The second one as well being the one with the colourful balls, which you have to line up exactly in the exact orientation. And then obviously the one at the end, which is the where you have to line up the lines and mess around with the different things and the orientation of the colours of the lines and stuff. That was really cool, and that was to sort of progress and power lifts and to power doors open and stuff. So different puzzles did different things, and I really appreciated that. It wasn't just all the same. Overall, this game did a good enough job for me to enjoy playing it through and to not get irritated with the combat, the movement. The puzzles weren't boring. Yes, so there was a lot of bullet spongy combat in areas, but other than that, there was only a few areas in the game that really had that. So I can't really complain too much. For example, with the Callisto Protocol, I wanted it to be over within about 5 hours due to the repetitiveness of the combat, the story being kind of mid. I didn't really get this with this game. I enjoyed it the entire way through. I thought the story was good. We'll get onto that in a minute. And despite some of the issues, mostly, I think Atomic Heart was a good game from the gameplay, the visuals, and the puzzle perspective. Overall, I thought it was a good experience. So now, let's focus directly on the storyline. I'll try not to spoil anything in this video relating to the story, just in case you're on the fence about making the purchase or playing the game through, so this will be a non-spoiler story review. So, how were the characters throughout the game? In some games, characters can come across as very cringy and just not likable, and that's immediately unimmerses the player from the gameplay. If there's a character that I don't like, don't agree with, think that they've taught bollocks, or there's just loads of cringe involved, I'm just not going to be interested in the story or give a shit about what happens to them at the end of it. And I didn't really get that in this game, which is always a very good start. A great comparison to make with this game is Forspoken. Now you're probably wondering, why would you make that comparison? They're nothing like. But in terms of when you play through the game, you have a companion on your wrist called Cuff. In this game, you have a companion on your hand as a glove called Charles. Both of these characters do the same thing. They feed you information, and from that information you learn more about the world, the characters within it, the story, the places you visit. You learn a lot from these things on your wrist and on your hand. And in Forspoken, the dialogue was cringy, the Cuff would just not shut up in combat, and it would just, ultimately, the back and forth between Frey and also Cuff was just irritating. It didn't work for me. I didn't like it at all.
I did not just do that.
We did.
I just moved shit with my mind.
Perhaps our connection has somehow awoken some abilities.
I just moved shit with my mind.
I just keep hearing I.
I just moved shit with my freaking mind! Yeah, okay, that is something I do now. I do magic, talk to sentient cuffs, kill jacked up beasts. You know what? I'll probably fly next.
Now you're just being ridiculous.
But the back and forth between Comrade Major, which was the character you played as, and Charles in this game, which was the glove, the characters had good and back and forth banter. I felt like their friendship became stronger over time as well. They became more resilient with one another. At the start, they were both very hesitant, but then towards the end of the game, they became a lot closer. They started calling each other by their first names and stuff like that. Like, it was a good development of the two characters. The ending was a bit mad, won't spoil anything though, but the development of the two characters was very good in this game, and I didn't think the dialogue was cringy that much throughout. There were still obviously cringy bits like crispy critters every 5 minutes, which...
We could take the same elevator we took to get up here.
Thanks, Einstein. What would I ever do without you?
He swears throughout the entirety of the game, but then in some areas he chooses not to swear and says crispy critters. Like, I don't know who thought of that catchphrase, but it is what it is. It's done now. Other characters such as Granny Xena, an interesting and mysterious character throughout that you learn a lot more information on as the story progresses. Sechenov, who's not really a main character, but he's a big staple in the storyline and the overall plot of the game as well. So I thought his motivations were very clear. We have Chariton Zakharov, we also have Larissa Petrov, the project of Collective and Collective 2.0, and of course the Atomic Heart project. All of them were really, really interesting. All of them had good links and they all made sense, which was the most important part. How was the story? How was the plot? Was it strong? Did it live up to the hype? I thought it was pretty good, I won't lie. From a story perspective, there was a nice plot twist at the end as well. I thought it was good overall. It was a good game to play, to learn the information of, and the overall world and the scenario that they had built. It was interesting. I thought it was a pretty cool concept. I mean, I think it was the Soviet Union had all of this technological advancements with the likes of Collective and controlling robots with their mind and building all of these flying cities because of this one mind, Sechenov. But oh my fucking god, I don't know what the developers thought they were trying to do with telling the story, but it didn't work for me at all. The plot-wise, as I mentioned, I thought was pretty good. But Jesus Christ, they didn't half tell you the critical story information in stupid fucking times during the playthroughs. Like all dialogue around why characters were in these situations, informations on these different projects, why we're doing something, lore around locations, characters and things like that, all came from Charles telling you this information in the most stupid locations and times possible. All of this dialogue was progression based, meaning that if I move through a particular doorway, the dialogue will then cue like that, and then Comrade Major will ask Charles a question, and then Charles will answer it in like 10 paragraphs, which is really irritating. You have to almost stop everything that you're doing in one place to just listen to what Charles is saying. Try to take and absorb all of that information in, and then carry on 10 minutes later where he asks him another question, and then he goes into more detail, another 10 paragraphs of information, wait 10 minutes, do the same thing again. It didn't work for me. It took so much longer to understand what the hell was going on, what characters were in prison for, what characters were doing different things for, the motivations of different characters. For me, it was not something that worked, and Why didn't they just use generic cutscenes for giving you this valuable information? A great example, and I'm always going to use this as an example, Halo 2 is the best for this. To be fair, all of Bungie's old Halo games are perfect for this. Every cutscene that they deliver to you, every cutscene you see in those games, the first trilogy, ODST, Reach, all of them give you critical story information within cutscenes. And then the other parts of information which link bits together, so like the non-critical areas of information, will sometimes be told to you when playing through in gameplay, going through missions, and then it links together in cutscenes. You don't have that in Atomic Heart. All of this information, critical information for the story, is given to you just playing through the game, and it slows down the gameplay so much because I'm so concentrated on what the hell's Charles is saying whilst trying to fend off a robot coming in, and I'm not paying attention, so I'm missing things out. I don't know why they decided to do it in this way, but for me it didn't work, and I wouldn't recommend any game developer, studio doing it like this in the future in terms of telling a story. Stick to what we know, stick to what that works, and just document that this does not work. Not to mention either, Charles speaks at like 300 miles an hour, so you really have to pay attention with everything. I also want to add in this section as well relating to the story is the amount of filler and time wasting that went on throughout, and it was so apparent. Like they didn't even like try to hide it or make it seem like it was a part of the story. There was so much time wasting in this game to prolong the length of the game, and it was extremely obvious, and I wasn't a fan of it. I never really am. I would probably say the 10 hour of gameplay that I put into this, 5 hours was relating to the story. The other 5 hours were just things that you were just prolonged to rather have Charles spout a load of nonsense about the story and critical information in areas that you probably didn't need to hear it, or general wastes of time. A couple of examples. In one of the missions later on into the game, you have to go onto a train to another area of the map in order to continue on with the story. So we get to the train, we go onto the train, and the robot says we need a ticket. So we're like, okay, where do we find a ticket? A couple of minutes of back and forth and whatever like that. And then we eventually have to go and find a ticket on one of 4 bodies. Each body gets further and further away, and obviously the ticket's on the last body. So you spend 10 minutes going through all the dialogue between all the characters. So you have a conversation with each of these dead bodies, and then the very last one, which is a couple hundred meters away, actually has the ticket. You go back to the train, and then the driver says, oh, actually, you don't need a ticket because you're a law enforcement officer. So we've just wasted 20 minutes trying to get this ticket that we didn't need. I was not a fan of that. The second one was actually even worse than this one. And that was when we go into this place, when we've got from the train to this new place, we go inside this place, and immediately after, the door doesn't open. So we have to unblock the door. So we go and unblock the door, mess around with things here and there. Loads and loads of critical story information just thrown at you in this section as well. And then when we get into the building, we then have to find another robot in order to activate this security measure that we've been asked to do. But this robot that we need to find is in fucking pieces. 5 or 6 different pieces. We have to walk around this facility, find the piece, do a mini boss fight for every single one of them, add the piece on. And it's so tedious. It's things like this that, yes, prolong the game out, make the game longer, but do they really need to do that? Like, is there really no other things that they can do in the game relating to the story or relating to characters that we need to do, whether it's an actual mission for a character to do something, to get something, to do whatever? But I'm not a fan of this sort of stuff in general. I don't like when developers try to prolong the game too much. And I just thought there was too much of it going on in this game. Look, without giving anything away around the story, I don't want to go into much detail about it with it being a non-spoiler review. But I thought it was a solid game nonetheless. There are some games out there with good stories, good plots, good gameplay, and this was one of those games. It was just a good game in general. It wasn't great, it wasn't perfect. There are a lot of things I didn't like about the game. But in terms of a solid experience that you're going to get at least 10 hours out of, I would definitely recommend Atomic Heart, and especially because it's day one on Game Pass. If you've got Game Pass, it's free. Go get it, go play it. So what's my final verdict then? Should you avoid this game, shortlist it, or just go ahead and straight up buy it? Well, I would recommend shortlisting Atomic Heart. Wait for a few more updates, a few more reviews, and then make your decision that way if you're going to purchase it. However, the game is on Game Pass, as I mentioned. So if you have Game Pass, download it and play it. Why not? It's a really good game to have on Game Pass because it's like a good, solid Game Pass game. $60 though, I'd be on the fence about paying that. Probably not, to be honest. Overall though, Atomic Heart for me gets a solid 6 out of 10. I thought it was a good, average game. I didn't think it was bad. I thought the story was quite good. The gameplay and mechanics were quite good. But just the filler in the game, some of the spongy boss battles, the performance issues that I encountered throughout as well, especially on a console like the Xbox One X, where it should be optimized to the nines, really. It wasn't. I thought there was a couple of things that could have been improved. So for me, it's a solid 6 out of 10. I've not got much more else bad to say around the game other than those things I've mentioned. But it's a good experience. Go check it out. Go play it for yourself. And let me know down below what you think. But that's going to be it for today, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. Leave a like if you have. Let me know down below what you thought of Atomic Heart. And without further ado, everyone, we'll see you all next time.